Thank you. Honourable Sir Roger Douglas.
Speaker, the budget is now a month old, and frankly, the more you look at the detail, the more inadequate it becomes. After 20 months in power, the government has a number of obvious traits, none of them particularly good. They intend to run the business of government better than the Labor Party did. Hardly a hard task or an ambitious goal. It is clear that they no longer believe very strongly in what they declare to be their principles: freedom, choice, individual responsibility or limited government. Their decision-making process is very clear. When faced with an issue that needs to be resolved, the first question they always ask, is what will the public accept on this issue? There is no leadership. We are run by focus groups. The question the government should be asking is what policy is in the best interest of the nation, and then, and only then, should they ask the question of how to sell those policies to the public. The difference between the two approaches is hugely significant. Under National's current approach, we will never reverse Labor's terrible policies. We will never catch Australia, and Prime Minister John Key will be in danger of going the same way that Kevin Rudd has gone. Because in the end, only quality policies bring real returns to the people of New Zealand. The second question of asking what should be done in the best interest of New Zealand would mean that catching Australia would be only a matter of time. Mr. Speaker, we can turn New Zealand's current problems, including lack of growth, into opportunities if we define clearly what we want to deliver to the people of New Zealand and how we intend to deliver it. The key issues facing this nation are the same that have faced this nation for 40 years: health, education, welfare, unemployment, crime, housing, etc. For 70 years, governments have tried to run these areas of people's lives with disastrous consequences. Public expenditure has expanded to over 50% of GDP as a result, causing low productivity and an excessive strain on taxpayers. At the same time, the government's management of people's lives have stripped them of the possibility of getting ahead. Despite increases in our nation's wealth, we see more people relying on the state for assistance. Offering short-term answers to these problems will never solve them, nor will examining each of them in isolation work either. The issues are fundamentally linked, and I believe the people of New Zealand know it. The problems of poverty, of lack of motivation, inadequate skills, alienation and unemployment all reinforce one another. These problems create the conditions that lead to health problems, lack of opportunity and lack of economic growth. These issues, Mr. Speaker, are central to any recovery in New Zealand because they react negatively on rich and poor alike. They focus on the plight of the disadvantaged and the adverse impact their situation has on the rest of us. The only way of satisfying both sides of this equation is for New Zealanders to agree on some overall objective, overriding objective. That objective would need to include the following elements: improvement in living standards of all New Zealanders, and particularly the disadvantaged. Such an objective would then allow any political party who wanted to integrate their thinking on growth, investment, health, education, welfare, jobs, equity, security and social harmony. Such an objective also has the virtue of putting all New Zealanders, hopefully also the political parties, on the same page. We all want to help New Zealanders, especially the disadvantaged. We all share the same goal. Where we differ is over the means that we adopt to help them. This is where we can have our arguments. ACT likes choice in education, healthcare and welfare. We like, for example, people to be able to choose or free to choose where they send their children. National, Labor, the Greens and the Maori Party favour compulsion. They say you can only go to the school of your choice if you're rich enough to be able to pay private fees or rich enough to move into your preferred school zone. ACT likes competition because it promotes efficiency, better use of resources, higher incomes, while giving people choice. National, Labor, the Greens and the Maori Party favour monopoly. They like to have monopolies in health, in education and the welfare system. Only one place to choose from and no incentive to improve efficiency. Acts like self-reliance, where people are allowed to keep their own money with lower taxes or tax credits, which enable all New Zealanders to purchase their child's education, healthcare or welfare insurance. National, Labor, the Greens and the Maori Party prefer dependency. After people have paid their taxes, the people of New Zealand simply do not have enough money left over to be self-reliant, and so they are forced to vote for the party that they believe offers them the best handout. ACT believes that you should be able to get ahead through hard work, while the rest of the political party want to tax success hard in order to create dependency. Mr. Speaker, while income is important to the disadvantaged, it is also not enough to remedy their situation. Their deeper need, which I believe only ACT offers, is to have the incentives and the opportunity to make real advances for themselves through their own efforts. By helping them to achieve independence and to contribute to society, we transform their future and everyone else's with it. Disadvantaged people need access to education, health care, housing and benefits that guard them against emergency, adversity and disability. But forced education where they learn nothing, life on a benefit or government-created jobs simply perpetuates their problem. Scope for constructive personal choice is basic to human dignity. The disadvantaged need the kind of help that puts people on their feet, able to make decisions for themselves by doing so. Mr. Speaker, the social cost of very low productivity growth in New Zealand over a long period of time has damaged the security and well-being of people at every level of New Zealand society. It is about time we did something about it. We need, Mr. Speaker, to stop worshipping sacred cows that do not exist. We need to understand that without efficiency, improved equity, for example, is impossible to achieve. We need to understand that waste consumes resources which would otherwise have been available to improve equity levels throughout the community. Certainly everyone involved in wasting resources, and there's plenty of that, collects a rent, dividend or a pay packet, but they do so at the expense of the whole community, and we need to understand that. People as well as money and physical resources are forced to relocate in activities which produce a benefit to the community if we eliminate that waste. But it is a nonsense, Mr. Speaker, to pretend that such a change to the status quo for them is a reduction in the overall levels of equity. The interest groups who make that argument are stating a case for gains to them at the expense of everyone else's well-being. And I think it's time, Mr. Speaker, that we examine the $3 billion of special privileges that go largely to business that are in the budget. We could reduce, if we got rid of that $3 billion of handouts like the film industry grants, etc., we could reduce taxation dramatically in this country.